Okay, I opened up those holes, 2 drill bit size. That would have been 15/64 and then 1/4 inch. Alright, so now we're going to mix up the epoxy. I use the Tap Plastics 314 laminating resin. It's equivalent in performance to West Systems epoxy system. I have been using the Tap Plastics product for, I don't know, probably 20 years or more in my composites business when I was doing that, and I still do kind of as a hobby. It has lower amines than the West system. I did get hives once early on in my composites career. That was a previous business. Using West systems and switched to the Tap Plastics, and the lower amine I think is what the issue is. Never had any reaction to it. And then using the 102 fast hardener, which is comparable to West Systems Fast Hardener. So anywhere in the country where there's a boat shop, you can get West Systems epoxy. It's 4:1 by weight, and so I tear a cup, put some resin in it, take that weight, multiply it times 1.25, add hardener until that weight shows up on the scale. Pretty simple. And then after a minute of aggressively mixing it, and we use paper cups, not wax cups. If you use a wax paper cup, you'll scrape the wax into your mix, and that's not good because the wax won't stick to the epoxy. And so I use the small paper solo cups for small mixes, and also use the large solo plastic cups. Don't use a plastic cup that has like a, I don't have the one handy, it's not worth getting, but like a recessed groove around the bottom edge where it'd be difficult to mix the whatever resin is in that groove up with the rest of the resin. So ideally you want as flat a bottomed cup as possible. Alright, and then mix some powders with it to thicken it up and to color it. So created some walnut dust out of some scrap pieces of walnut, and collected them in a bottle. Usually I have a lot more than that, but I just did enough for this job. Do it on the end of the belt sander, on the end roll. You just hold this right on the end roll and the cup underneath, and just harvest some sanding powder. And that largely gives it color and also thickens it a little bit. And then I add some milled glass fibers, which give it strength. Hazardous powder there. And then Cabasil, which is thixotropic silica. In other words, it's a thickening powder to control consistency. When I do composites work, I also add some microballoons to give it light weight, and also can control its consistency in a different way. It makes it smoother, where the silica makes it sort of more thick. And then also doing composites work, sometimes we use cotton flock, which also has build-up properties for making like fillets. But here it's going to be fine, and so I'm going to go about mixing it, and then we're going to use a stick, and we're going to apply it wherever we want it. We're going to stick the action down in there, and then I'm going to probably clamp it in place with some squeeze clamps. Now, in fact, what I'm doing verbally for you right now, what I'm going to do, I do that in my own head, sometimes out loud, before doing any important step, just to kind of do a practice, a verbal run-through of everything that I'm going to do, so I don't get halfway into the steps and it's like, oh, this part wasn't ready for me yet, or what am I going to do now? Those kind of panics. So I'm not just doing it for the camera, this is how I work. Okay, here we go. You know what, I'm just going to turn it off, and no, I guess I'll leave it on. I just really hate wasting people's viewing time. Oh, I put a new pumper on this. See, this is why I don't want to waste people's time. Put a new squeeze pump on the little bit that's left in this bottle. I'm grunting because I'm moving resin through the pump. Yep, that's good. Alright. Now, of course, when you have an audience, you always screw up, so I didn't tear the cup. That's okay. I'll tear this other cup. There we go. So we got 19.7 grams on there times 1.25. So we're looking for 24.6. There we go, it's going, it's going, it's going. Now with a little digital scale like this, they time themselves out, they turn off after a bit, 24.6. If they're not seeing this is way more than I needed. That's alright. The bigger batch you make, the less little errors of mixing matter. Oh yeah, that's a lot. Gee, I wish I had something else I needed resin for. Didn't look like much when it was coming out of there. It's actually not really very much. It's just, hopefully it's more than I need. It might be just right, because I didn't mention I'm going to run a bead along the edge of the forearm. This might actually be just right. A little of this, a little of that. Mixing is one more of folding it in, because the stuff will get up in the air. Usually when I'm doing this, not showing the camera what I'm doing, I walk and do it off to the side of me. So any powder that comes up is being left behind me. Yeah, I probably should wear a respirator, but I think it's perfectly fine. And the stuff falls out of the air almost instantly. They're kind of heavy materials, even though they're so fine. They do fluff up when you mix. They'll fall out of the air right away. And this awful tiny, well, it's probably not perfect shop practice. And when I do larger composite things, of course, I wear a respirator. I also like to hook the vacuum up to the edge of the table and mix next to it. But for mixing this little batch, this is just fine. Just darkening it up a little bit with a little more sanding dust. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the color, matching the color a little bit. Just adding wood and cabosil to control the color. And we need a lot more thickening. Uh-oh. Yes, I was holding my breath. Alright, that's looking good. Still a little thin. I'm looking for fairly stiff peanut butter. It's going to start running out of time here. Not a great place for those. I've got more magnet strips. I should hang one over there by the gantry drill press where I use those things. I've only been in the shop a year and a half now. There's still a lot of infrastructure and setup to do. Oh, here we go. I'm liking this. Still really almost maybe a tad thin, but I just want to start laying it in and see how it works. So I scraped the stick so that it's kind of on one side, and then I'm going to twist this and lay that a sort of longish dollop in. Yep, I think you're going to be able to see. I'm just laying that down along the top edge of the forearm here. Yep, looking good. You know, I was thinking I made too much. I think it's going to be just right. Hopefully I don't get any gaps, because I can't sand the top of the forearm. I'm probably not going to do a lot of screeding and pushing it in. Oh, let me get around over here. Alright, one side's done. The epoxy is starting to get a little warm. I sanded the inside top edge here where I'm laying this epoxy in. I didn't sand all the way through the color. I just roughed it up. Sanded enough to make sure there's no like oil or anything just sitting on the surface. Oh yeah, this is going good. Epoxy is a thermosetting resin. Generates its own heat. To accelerate the cure, you can add heat. Alright, now this is a monster gap. And we're probably going to have to stuff a bunch more bedding compound down next to the action. I'm not going to be able to build it up that big before I put it in. So we'll just get that much. Now we got a dollop here. A dollop here. Oh yeah, cup is definitely getting warm. Alright, now inside of here. And here. Alright, that hit all our points. Alright, I'm happy. By the way, I wax all the steel on the entire gun. I only PVA the part I'm working on, but I wax the entire gun, the barrel, everything. So if I accidentally get an errant fingerprint somewhere, it'll come off. You know, a glued, an epoxied fingerprint. Well, I didn't do a dry run with this clamping concept, but seems like it's not a big deal. I don't want to overly clamp it. I'm not trying to put a huge amount of force on it. I just, since there's no screw holding it in, so I'm going to do that separately. Yep, I like that. Oops, nope. I'm not sure the front end is even necessary. It seems like the action's heavy enough, it just finds its own home there. Plus it's going to have these screws. I think I'm going to skip that idea. Oh, let me check. Okay, the hole's pretty well filled, but does have a gap. So I'm just going to put a big old dollop of glue. I picked up some fuzz. Put some epoxy on the bolt. Yeah, that's a lot. Alrighty. You see the other side? Yeah, hole's almost full. So I'll do the same routine here. A little bit on the end. Stick it in there. Yay. Alright. The top of the forearm looks great. Doesn't really look like it needs any screeding. Oh, here. You could take a pair of scissors and cut a fresh, sharp edge. This one looks pretty good. Oh yeah, that's right. We've got to finish filling the back. Alrighty. Alright, it feels like a good squish. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think this is going to be great. So, question is if I want to let the glue set up a little bit before I pull the tape or pull it now. I think I'll pull it now. I'd rather deal with any necessary cleanup early. Let's see how it goes. Oh, nice. Real nice. Let's see, maybe, can I cut this? I want to take my clamp off. Oh, this is coming out very nice. It is perfect. Yipper. I am a happy guy. It feels good. I want to make sure the barrel isn't putting any pressure. Get this up here. Make sure that's secure. Looks great. Okay, I'll check back in with you when I pop it out of there, and then we'll bed the trigger guard on with a little bit of extra. So we'll put some tape maybe on the bottom of the trigger box or somehow to create a little bit of extra gap so that we have some squishing room when we bolt that back together again. Alright, I'll be back in a while. Well, not a while. It's probably won't be till tomorrow now, or maybe later tonight. After this sets up for an hour or two, I'll put it in front of the heater in the house, and maybe by 8 or 9 o'clock tonight it might be hard enough to pop, and I'll come back on. If not, we'll see you tomorrow.